Hi everyone, my name is Maria and this is my channel, T-Books Magic, and I am here today to do my TBR for the Magical Readathon, which is a readathon created and hosted by G over at Book Roast. I'll link her channel down below in the description. And essentially she created this whole entire world, backstory for the world, continents, characters for this readathon. It's very unique, creative, and just blows my mind kind of what she was able to come up with. So if you haven't heard of it yet, I'd recommend looking at her channel and her video to get more specifics on it. But what we're doing right now is called Aurelium, or the Novice Path, and that runs through the month of September. And basically it's kind of a journey of us creating our characters, and those characters then trying to complete this Novice Path to get to this magical academy. And then in April of 2022 there will be kind of a magical academy readathon, which will include probably classes and studies and things like that. But right now we're just trying to get there. So the readathon essentially has two parts to it. It's got journey prompts, of which there are 6, but you really only have to complete 2 in order to complete the journey and make it to that academy. And then there are character prompts, which are helping you create your character, and they're kind of where they come from, who they are, things like that. And there are 3 of those character prompts. I have been a bit slumpy in the last few months, mostly because we've had a lot going on this summer, and my reading has been kind of all over the place. I haven't been picking up books that I love as much, so I've been a little bit slumpy and kind of struggling with reading, so I'm not expecting too much out of myself. 2 prompts in order to succeed and kind of finish this readathon is great, and then if I get through any of the character prompts, I'll be happy, but otherwise you can keep doing the character prompts and building that character through April of 2022, so that gives me a little bit of leeway there. So I'm going to start with the journey path, which I'm not going to go through all 6 of them. I'm just going to talk about the 2 that I'm doing. The first one that I'm doing is the Novice Path entrance, and that essentially is read a book with a map in it. And for that one, I'm going to be reading Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. And this is a book that, I'll be honest, I don't actually know much about. I know that it's Viking inspired, that it's by John Gwynne, who wrote the Faithful and the Fallen series, the series that starts with Malice. I actually meant to read The Faithful and the Fallen, or Malice, first before getting to this book, because I tend to like finished and completed series more, so this is a book that just came out this year. I was kind of gonna put it off. But Cass from What Cass Read actually just launched a Patreon. I'll link her channel down below. She's wonderful and one of my favorite fantasy channels to watch. And she launched a Patreon, and part of that Patreon kind of perks is that she's doing a monthly Patreon buddy read, and the book that was chosen for September is Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. So I'm going to use this as my journey prompt to satisfy the map one, and then also to participate in Cass's buddy read. So I'm really excited about that. Hopefully it's good. I'm excited to, in general, kind of get into John Gwynne's writing and get to know him a bit more, and then hopefully get to The Faithful and the Fallen later on this year. And the second and the essentially last journey prompt that I'm doing is the Tower of Rumination, which is to read a book that is a 5-star prediction. And for this one, I am going with The Black Coast by Mike Brooks. And this is a book that I'm actually buddy reading with Mary Beth from Mary Beth Dwells in Books. I will link her channel down below as well. She is a wonderful friend and a great buddy reading partner, and one of my favorite BookTube channels as well. Her and I have very similar tastes in books, so buddy reads with us are always fun. And we are actually most of the way through this one. So we will hopefully finish it off in the next couple of days, and that'll be my first book read for this readathon, and I am loving it so far. So hopefully this 5-star prediction stays true. This book also came out in 2021, and I've had my eye on it for a little while, because what I heard about it essentially was that it's about 2 different cultures primarily that were always at war with each other. One of them kind of came and would attack and raid the other culture, and what is now happening is that there's this new threat, and the culture that always raided and attacked this other society is now coming across the ocean and essentially is asking for asylum or for help. They're coming over with the goal of peace, and it's about these 2 cultures that have always been at war with each other kind of figuring out a way toward peace, and if they can reconcile their differences in religion and beliefs in their past history, and kind of trying to find a way to a better future together. And I've always been fascinated by those kinds of themes, so I was really excited to get into this, and I'm loving it so far. So hopefully it delivers and is a 5-star book. That would be really great, and I'm really excited to get into the sequel, but more on that in just a little bit. But yeah, highly recommend so far. Like I said, I'm about 3/4 of the way through it, so I feel like I can make a pretty solid recommendation at this point. And now moving on to the character prompts, there are essentially 3 of those, and the first one is about your background. So you are either a wildling or you are urban, and the wildling prompt is essentially to read a book set in a forest or outside, and the urban prompt is to read a book set in a town or city. And this one is the one that gave me the most trouble, because I don't I wanted to fit a specific book into this prompt, but I don't know which one it'll fit. I'd rather be of an urban background based on kind of everything else I'm creating for my character. And I think, I guess let me just get to the book and I'll explain my reasoning. So the book that I'm going with for the background character prompt is Wings of Shadow by Nikki Pau-Preto, and this is the third book in the Crown of Feathers trilogy. It's the final book that just came out a few months ago, I believe, maybe August. But essentially this is a trilogy that features Phoenix riders, and it kind of starts off in book one with two sisters who are both trying to find their way to the Phoenix Riders. And the Phoenix Riders are a rebellious group that essentially used to be in rule, if I remember correctly, but are now living and hiding in the mountains and have an academy there for other Phoenix Riders. And two sisters at the beginning of the first book essentially are trying to become Phoenix Riders themselves, and there's a lot of emotional complexity to the sisters' relationship. They're very close because the older sister raised the younger sister. They didn't really have parents. But also it's not the easiest relationship, and we kind of get more into that in the rest of the books. It has been a while. I read both book 1 and 2 back to back last year, so forgive me if I got any of the book 1 synopsis wrong, but essentially, like I said, Phoenix Riders, sisters, and a complicated relationship. It's a really great YA series. I absolutely recommend it. I was really invested, and I'm excited to finish this third book and find out how the story ends. Here's the thing about the prompt. The way that book 2 ended makes me think that this will have a lot of town and city in it. So I'm hopeful that this will give me the urban character prompt, but it is a book that was primarily set in the mountains, not necessarily a forest, but outside in the mountains for books 1 and 2. So there's a good chance that maybe there won't be a town or city. I think that we will spend a good time in a town or city, but if not, I'll just use this as the wildling character prompt and be a wildling. I'm not that fussed about it. I just think that based on kind of the continent where I am, urban makes more sense, but at the end of the day, I really want to read this book, so that's what I'm focusing on, and it will just, based on how it goes, I'll determine which background I have. So the second character prompt that I want to do is Province, and I've chosen Carador. It's described as very bright and cheery. There's inns, there's music, entertainment. It just seemed like a fun place to live. So I want my character to be from there. It just looks like somewhere I would want to live, so that's why I chose it. And for this, the prompt is to read a book from an ongoing series. So for this, I'm excited, and I'm going to pick up The Splinter King by Mike Brooks, which is book 2 to the Black Coast, which I just talked about earlier, and is coming out in just a couple days, so I am very excited to pick it up. I'm hoping that Mary Beth and I can buddy read this together as well, if we can kind of align our schedules, and I just am loving this world so much, and the story and kind of the complexity, again, of the different cultures and them trying to reconcile their differences, so I'm really excited to see where the story goes, and I also love reading back to back in one world, so I'm just excited to kind of continue on and not take a large gap from it. So that's going to be my pick for the Province, Carador. And the third and final character prompt is to pick your heritage. So essentially you can be like a dwarf, an elf, a human, an earthling, Illyrians. There's a lot of different races and different specifics to them. Again, if you want to kind of know more, I recommend checking out G's video for the Magical Readathon announcement and her printables. She has a lot of documents that she created to give you that brief history of this world, and you can read about the different races there. But I chose an earthling, which essentially is kind of an elemental creature. They can have powers of water, fire, earth, air, and their skin will kind of take on leopard-like spots of whatever your specialty is in which element. So I've always loved elemental magic, so that's the one I wanted to go for. And this one is the book that I think I'm least likely going to get to in September. I'll probably move it into October or even November, just depending on kind of what I get to. But again, you really just have to complete all the character prompts by April of 2022, so plenty of time. And I knew that this was the book that I wanted to choose for it. So I'm going with Witch Shadow by Susan Dennard, which is the newest release in the Witchland series and essentially book 4 of the series, but there was a novella in between, and I count it pretty much as I think it's a very important part of the series. It's actually one of my favorite books in the series. So kind of book 5, but really officially book 4. This just came out a month or so ago, and I'm really excited to get to it. This is set in a world where you have different witcheries, so you can have elemental witches like a wind witch or a water witch, and then you can have other powers like a thread witch who can kind of see threads that connect and relationships that connect different people, or a blood witch who's kind of like an assassin and can sentence your blood. There's just all kinds of different different magics in this world. It's very interesting as the way it's built, and the characters are all really interesting. I love the main relationship at the heart of this book, which is two best friends, Isolde and Safi, who are just kind of each other's thread sisters and soulmates, platonic soulmates, and it's just a lot of the story is about their dynamic and relationship, which I love. And then there's also other characters that we get to know along the way. I will say that the one thing, not to do like a mini review of this now because I don't want to take too much time, but I will say that the one thing about the series is that I do struggle with Susan Dennard's writing style a little bit. Book one gave me a really hard time. She kind of just drops you in with no plot explanation or magic explanation. You just kind of have to flounder until you figure out the world yourself. And then every book since then has also been a bit tough for me just in terms of the way she structures her sentences and kind of the way that she builds this world. I always find that these books take me a really long time to read, which is partly why I don't think that I'll be able to get to it this month, and I'm kind of setting it aside for when I do have more time on my hands rather than in the middle of a readathon. But this will be my elemental choice regardless and will help me become an earthling. I've not chosen yet what kind of earthling I want to be or what element I want to have my speciality, so that's something I'll kind of be thinking of later on. So those are all of the books that I am choosing for the Aurelium Novice Path and for the character prompts associated with the Magical Readathon. I am really excited. Like I said, I'm trying to take it easy and not overwhelm myself too much. So if I just finish 2 books for that journey path, that at least means I successfully completed the readathon, and then I can continue on with the character prompts as we make our way closer to the second part of the readathon. If I can get through some of those now, I'll be really happy with myself as well. But the nice thing is that it's helping me get back into the mood with reading after having been out of it for a little bit. Let me know if you are also participating in the Magical Readathon or what you're just reading in September and what you're looking forward to the most. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an absolutely lovely day.